Welcome back to Dezavi Productions. My name's Dezavi. Today, we're doing part 4 and the final part of how to make a beat inside of ProTools. Today, we're going to cover how to add a reverb and delay and how to finally mix and master your beat. If you haven't seen the other parts, click on the info card in the top corner. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss a video. Without further ado, let's get to it. Alright guys, so in part 3 we left off by creating this arrangement, and jumping into mixing and mastering, it's very important for you to understand that everybody's process is different. Though there are some principles to follow, there is no right or wrong way of doing this. Everybody has their own technique that makes them unique. This is why people get Grammys, awards, and recognitions for their style of mixing and mastering. There really is an art form to this. One of the ways that I like to explain this is picture us being painters, and we're painting this beautiful painting, which is this audio track, and we all have the same paintbrushes available to us. The paintbrushes being like the plugins like EQs, compressors, reverbs, delays, effects, and all these things. And the way that we use it is not necessarily the way that others are going to use it, but it's unique to our own style. So be creative and don't be afraid to try new things. Alright, with that being said, let's get started. Now the very first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to bounce out the mix as it is. So when we do have the mix and master done, we have something to compare it to so we can see and check our work. So we're going to select the track from the very end to the start here, just outside to where it ends. And we're going to go to File, Bounce Mix. We're going to call it Raw Unedited File, a 16-bit interleaved in where it says Beat Tutorial. And we're going to bounce it. All right, now that we have the raw unedited file done, let's go ahead and start doing some mixing and mastering. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by cleaning up the instruments individually one by one, and I like to approach this in a group way. So I like to start with the drums first and then move on to the other instruments, because to me personally, the drums are what adds the bounce to the track. So if I can get those to sound nice and clean, then the rest of the track will follow. So I'm actually going to select a portion here of the track that has all the instruments playing at one time, and I'm going to mute the piano, mute the bass, and mute the choir. So let's listen to the drums. So I'm going to start with the kick here. I'm going to add an EQ 7. I'll be using stock plugins for this tutorial. And I'm going to start by subtracting the high frequencies that aren't really there. And if you want to, you can hold Control and Shift and you can solo this particular frequency. We're going to mute the rest of the instruments here and work with the kick. And then we're going to enhance. We're going to solo this part. Okay, so that's a little bit of the punch right there. So we're going to raise that a little bit. As you can see, it's already peaking, so we're going to take down the input down by 2 and the output down by 2. We're going to isolate the frequency here, the 1000. And I'm going to pull this one down a little bit. I'm going to turn this one off. And then we're going to compare right now. We're going to bypass it to see what we got. Sometimes you don't need a whole lot of movement here. So it sounds punchier. Let's play with the other instruments to see what it sounds like. I'm going to enhance part of this one here. I'm going to go up by 1. Going to bypass it. We're going to push this to a -1 so we can put a little bit of that output so it's equal. Let's raise this one. That's too much. All right, let's go with 2. Buy it. Okay, let's add the snare here. The snare sounds a little dull, so we're going to enhance this one using an EQ. And I'm going to take out some of this low end using a high pass filter. I'm going to go to 90. And I want some of that top end to stick out a little bit. Let's see what this one has. Okay, so we're going to go with, let's go with 5,000. And we're going to push this up 2. We're peaking on the output, so we're going to knock this down about 2. Go to 2.5, and now we're going to push this one a little bit higher. Okay, so let's play with the kick. Next, the hi-hat. This one's not going to need a whole lot. We're going to just simply raise the high end a little bit here, about 2.3. Output's fine. We're going to go to the crash. Same, we're going to add an EQ in here. Keep in mind, you do not have to do an EQ on every single track. This is all your preference, as I've stated before. So I want to have a little bit of that high end sound crispier, cleaner. So I'm going to mute these. Sometimes you can push it high just to see what it sounds like at the beginning. Okay. Okay, so we're going to push this down to about 3. It's a little hollow, so I'm going to bring this down a little bit, and then we might actually take this one out. We'll pull this one down, and we'll bring this one in. So it sounds more solid. We're going to take out some of the low frequencies. We're going to check it first. Okay, so let's go ahead and play the drums. I'm going to mute these. And if we bypass the plugins one by one, okay. Next, I like to use the drums as a bass, as a median, I guess you could say, reference for the entire track, because like I said, this was what to me personally gives it that bounce. So I'm going to actually start moving some of these knobs here, some of the faders. Crash is a little bit too loud. The hi-hats as well. Okay. Next, we're going to bring in the bass. And before I add an EQ to this, I'm going to actually add a saturator. So I'm going to go with harmonic. I'm going to go with saturation knob. So I'm going to add the saturation knob first, and then I'll add the EQ after that. So you can listen to what it's doing. So it adds a little bit of fuzz, just enough to give it that nice drive. I'm gonna play this. And then one thing I'm gonna show you guys here is I'm gonna use an EQ. And please keep in mind that presets are there for a reason. It's okay to use presets. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, okay? Presets are made by professional engineers in an actual acoustically treated studio. So yes, these are presets that are made under control by professionals. So it's okay to use it. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. It's okay to use presets. You can use them as a starting point and then work your tweak it however it is that it sounds best for your particular instrument. So I'm gonna go to the bass guitar here and let's listen to what Bass Monster has for us here. Let's bypass this. So it sounds a little bit fuller. I'm gonna turn this down a little bit. We're gonna drop the output by 3. So we can get it closer to the actual input here. Okay, so let's play with the other instruments. And if we bypass all the plugins we have so far, add them back in. Now, when it comes to the bass lines, I don't know why everybody loves to just crank them up really loud, and that's what causes a distortion and clipping in your track, and then you wonder why your track sounds terrible when it's played on multiple outputs, such as like your car stereo or like your house radio or whatever the case may be. Please keep in mind that bass is very, very rumbly, of course, but if you push it too high, you're gonna distort your entire track. So we're gonna keep it a little bit subtle, and we're gonna take care of the actual full sounding bass in the master. So we're gonna keep it a little low. You don't want it overpowering your entire track here, just because it sounds cool. It's not gonna sound cool anywhere else. So let's go ahead and move on to the piano pad. So for this particular one, I'm going to add something that I have here called Parallel Aggressor. It's going to be in harmonics, I believe. If not, it's going to be in dynamics. Okay, let me see. Sound field, effect, Parallel Aggressor, okay? And I'm going to solo the piano so you guys can hear what it's doing. And I'm going to select, I'm gonna go here, and let me see what Rhodes Grit has, or maybe Synth Pad Warmer. Let's bypass this first and see what we have. Let's try the Rhodes Grit. No, that just makes it gives it too much saturation. So we're gonna go with Synth Pad Warmer. So let's bypass that. we're going to add an EQ here. And for this one, I don't want the low frequencies to collide with the bass and the kick frequencies, so I'm going to cut out just a little bit of that low end. So I'm going to use Control Shift to isolate this particular frequency so we can see what we're manipulating here. So the fullness of the track doesn't start until about 70 hertz. So we're going to cut that part out and we'll bypass it to see if it does anything crazy. Now it just makes it sound cleaner. So then we're going to tweak with some of these knobs here and see what frequencies we're messing with. I'm going to cut out that one a little bit. I'm going to change this one. Let's bypass it. Okay. So that gives it a clean sound, very subtle, but it makes a big difference. So let's go ahead and unsolo this. So it doesn't sound like one instrument is overpowering another in a certain frequency. Everything sounds pretty cohesive. So now we're going to add the choir. So I'm going to start off with an EQ here. And let's go to vocals. Let's see what we got here. Let's add a presence. So notice how I use the preset as a starting point. Once we got it to a point where we like it, we can start tweaking it. Unmute, bypass. So much cleaner. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually add, I'm going to save it first. And then we're going to add, let me see if I have it in here. It's something called Acon Digital Multiply effect. Okay, I'm not seeing it. Okay. I might not have it in here. Okay, here it is. Acon Digital Multiply. So let's go ahead and check this out. I'm gonna change it. So it gives it a wider sound. And let's go ahead and unsolo this. Let's actually throw the EQ after the multiply. And then we'll add a compressor in here to control some of those vocals. Pro compressor. Let's use a preset here, vocal. We're going to go with the vocal backing. And we're going to solo this. Too much. I'm going to change this to 2 to 1. A little less than me. So this is how much is being attenuated. And you can see the level here is on the fader. It's sticking at -12. So if we bypass it, it'll jump up. So we're going to pick this up just a little bit here. We're going to push this up by about 2. And then we'll pick up the vocal here. Okay, so now that we have the instrument sounding pretty cohesive, we're going to start it from here and we're just going to let it run and see what it sounds like when they start to drop off from the track. So let's go ahead and play this. So if we go to that part right here again and we bypass everything that we just added, let's listen to what it sounds like. We're gonna add it back in. Okay, so we got the levels to sound pretty good. The instruments are sounding pretty crisp and clean individually, and they all sound great together. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a reverb and a delay. So I'm going to add a reverb to only particular instruments such as the snare, the hi-hat, and the crash. And then we'll see if we need a delay anywhere else because I might not need it actually. So for starters, we're going to start by creating an auxiliary track, 2 auxiliary tracks. So we're going to go to the top where it says track. Go to new, and we're going to go to auxiliary input, stereo, and I'm going to call this one reverb. I'm going to add another one, and we're going to call this one delay, stereo, auxiliary input, create. Okay, so now we have a reverb and we have, I didn't say it. So delay, reverb and a delay. So the way that we're going to work this is we have to route the audio from the instrument to the reverb itself. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go to, let's say, snare, go to the sends, we're going to go to track, and we're going to send it to reverb. We're going to push this to the top. You can hold option and then click on the fader and it'll push it straight to the 0. And this is where we're going to be controlling the amount of reverb on that instrument. We're not going to control it from the actual fader of the reverb because we're affecting the entire reverb as it is. So if we want less or more, we're going to control it using this particular fader, which is the send. So we're going to take it to 0. I'm going to actually start from here. And same with the hi-hat. I'm going to send this to reverb. Oh, let's try that again. Track, reverb. Start from 0, from the very, very bottom. And then as we're listening to it, we'll add it in little by little, raise the volume so that we're not overpowering. So now we're not starting from the very, fully wet effect. So we're going to go to, so we have the snare, the hat, and the crash. So we are sending it to reverb 1. And on reverb, we're going to add a reverb, another stock plugin. We're going to use Deverb. So we're going to actually solo the snare, the hi-hat, and the crash. And let's listen to what we have. Oh, I have to go to the actual track where part of the track where it has all of them playing together. So in the reverb here, we're going to have 100% wet because remember, we're controlling the send, the amount of wetness to the send track, the fader here. So we're going to listen to this and we're going to start pushing it up till it gets to a nice level where it's not overwhelming, but it's not too subtle. We're going to add more diffusion to about 90%. We're going to add a pre-delay in there. Too much. I think that's just enough. Let's go to the hi-hat. Next, the crash. So let's take off the solo. Listen to what it sounds like with everything together. So we have just enough reverb to where we can hear it, but it's not overpowering the rest of the track. Now, if you want to get a little bit more creative, we can actually add an EQ to the reverb. If we want only the high frequencies to be of the reverb to be sounding. So we're going to, just an example, we're going to solo what we have for reverb. I'm going to solo the reverb here. I'm going to take this down a little bit more. You can do that in here too, but it gets a little bit more intricate if you use the actual EQ7. So I'm going to take off the solo. And then for the reverb, we're going to add a width. So we're going to go to sound field, air stereo width. And I'm going to push this further, add a delay in there, and let's solo this again. Snare, hat, and crash. It gives the track more space. So we're going to start over here where the instruments start to fall in and out. Okay, so that is a pretty good and simple mix here. So we didn't do a whole lot of changes. Me personally, I like to base my mix off of the drums to get it to sound really nice and crisp. And always remember that the most important instrument that you're going to be adding at the end of the day is the vocal. So if you have the vocal, add it in there and work your way around the vocal. And if you don't, and you're just going to be making a beat out of it, then you can take your pick of whether you like to, have your melody stand out or have your drums stand out, whatever the case may be. But do keep in mind that whatever your mix comes down to, at the end of the day, the most important instrument that you're going to be adding at the end is the vocal. So make sure that you always leave space for the vocal. Next, we're going to move on to the mastering. And we're going to this. So for the mastering, I do things, or actually, you know what? Reverb. I'm sorry, delay. So we're actually not going to be adding a delay because I feel like a delay, there's just too much space in here and it's going to knock some things out of order here. But we're going to, just because I said we would. So we're going to add a delay on the crash. So I'm going to send this to the delay, start from there, from 0, and then we're going to add a delay to the snare. So we're going to go to delay, and then we're going to add a delay into the delay fader insert here. So we're going to go to multi-channel delay, and we're going to go with, okay, so I personally like isotope delay. And I'm going to solo these again so we can hear what it's going to sound like. And go to a particular part here again. Okay, wait, what's going on here? So delay, okay, so we're going to push this up a little bit. We're going to push this up a little bit. So the timing is a little bit too much. I'm going to take this to quarter. So if we unmute this and play it with it, this is probably why I didn't want to add the delay at the end, because it's going to sound a little bit off. So if we go to right here where the track ends, or the snare ends for a little bit. See, it doesn't sound too great. So we're not going to be adding a delay for this. I wanted to, but it really makes no sense because it doesn't sound great with the track. So I'm going to mute that. And the way that I like to approach the master is I like to actually master the track individually and not use the master fader. I like to export this out as it is once it's done mixed, and then bring it into a new session, which I call the master session, and I'll start adding and building my master chain. So I'm going to go to file. So I'm going to go to file, bounce mix, and I'm going to call this mixed track, and I'm going to go to bounce. So now that we have the mix bounced out, we're going to start another session, and we're going to call that the master session. All right, guys, so here we have our master session, and I've imported the mix track that we did and the raw unedited file that we exported before we did anything to the track. So we're not going to play the raw unedited file just yet. We're going to do it until after we're done doing our master chain. So we're going to do something simple today. We're going to do an EQ, a compressor, and a limiter, and maybe a multi-band dynamic compressor. So, you know, keeping it simple, nothing too crazy. And this will give you enough clarity in the master and enough loudness to where you can, you know, post your track on streaming services or whatever the case may be. But do please keep in mind that if you want a professional, high quality master, do take it to a mastering engineer where they do have acoustically treated rooms that serve those purposes. So we're going to start with a simple EQ, EQ7. And we're going to start enhancing the track as a whole. So we will be pushing some of the output when we do make these adjustments. So please do keep that in mind. So we're going to actually start with a part, again, one of the parts of the track where there's a lot of instruments and everything's practically playing at the same time. So we're going to listen in, we're going to see what we got, and then we'll start making some tweaks and adjustments to enhance the sound and make it better. So let's take a listen. Okay, so what I've done here is I have enhanced some of the frequencies here, especially the high end, and you can hear that it starts taking a little bit more shape, a lot fuller. It does lose some of the volume, but we will make that up by using the limiter. So let's go ahead and play this again. Let's bypass it in and out to see what we got. Next, we're going to add a compressor, a multi-band compressor. And in here, we're going to adjust some of the frequencies that might be overpowering. Let's see if we drop the some of this here, how that affects the compressor. Nothing crazy, so we're just going to make a little adjustment here just to keep it below the certain line here. Okay, so we're gonna bypass the compressor and the EQ, and we'll see what we have versus what we've done. Next, we're gonna add the limiter. And we're going to start pulling back the threshold to get it to where it starts hitting, just tapping the peak there a little bit. Right now we are using listen, so we can listen to what is being clipped. Okay, so we're gonna bypass the 3 that we have here, and we're gonna bring them in one by one so we can listen to the difference and what it does to the track. So now what we're going to do is we're going to mute and unmute between the mixed and master track and the raw and edited file. So let's go ahead and start switching in and out so we can see the difference. That is a huge difference. So, you know, the raw unedited file sounds very dull, very muddy, very, the levels are just crazy. They're all competing for each other's frequency space there. And once we have the file with the mix and the master, then we start to hear that clarity, that evenness across the track, and we can actually start to picture or hear somebody in that mix. So once again, this is my process and the way that I do this. Obviously, it's different for every single track. I'm trying to keep it as simple and as informative as possible, so I'm not taking up a whole lot of your time. But do remember that if you want your full mix and master professionally done, do take it to a mix and mastering engineer. That's what they're there for. You will pay a lot of money, but you do get what you pay for. And on another hand, if you want to up your skills of mixing and mastering, you're not going to get your best tracks the first 4 or 5. It's going to take a lot of practice and a lot of tries to get your track to sound great. And one thing to look out for is your low end, because your low end sounds amazing on your stereo monitors, your studio monitors, but it may sound terrible on your car or on your little speaker or whatever the case may be. But do keep in mind that if you hear a lot of distortion and you have your bass super high, chances are you're distorting your entire track because your bass is way too high. I've had multiple issues with this where I have an artist bring me a track and the bass is like killer and they're like, oh my god, it's great, but it's like, no, you're not sounding clear because there's so much distortion in the audio track because of the bass. So the best way to manage that is to check your levels, make sure everything's fine, and find that room for your vocal. It's not always going to be just a beat, so keep those things in mind. But yes, if you guys want more in-depth and a little bit digging deeper into the mixing and mastering process, then let me know and I will make a video for that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if there's anything that I missed or that I should probably add. But once again, guys, thank you for watching and I hope you guys found this helpful. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this series, please comment below what you think I should cover next. Remember to subscribe and I'll see you at the next session.